Thank you for having me here today. Well, I have to confess something actually. I have the worst stage fright ever, and that's also one of the reasons why I applied to Talk the Talk, to overcome my fear. But turns out it's not something you really overcome. It's more like I now have this toolbox of different set of tools, and with those I can sort of bear being up here and not die, which is a good thing, of course. Do you have the clicker? Just a sec. Thank you. Are we good with the pictures, or?
I think so.
Okay, good, thanks. So we can move on. So my name is Sini, and first I chose a topic that was actually Finnish employment law, and I did do some research about that, and I know some stuff about that as well, but turns out it was so boring that I couldn't make a speech out of it. So now we're going with volunteering, a highway to heaven. Where do I have to click? Ah, there. Is this supposed to happen? Okay, there we go. So, you know, all great speeches, they start with a question. What would you do if you died tomorrow? I'm sure you've heard this one before, but I'm going to make it even greater. And you had infinite resources except time. So you would die tomorrow, but you would have infinite resources. So I want you guys to close your eyes, and I'm gonna count to 5, and you're gonna have to come up with your thing. I see you have your eyes open. So 5 seconds went past, and next I'm gonna count to 30 seconds, and you have to convince the person next to you why they should do the thing that you have chosen. So you can start. Can I join you? Can I join your conversation? Find your way here, because I know you're from Untitled, right? Yeah. Sorry, one of the organizations up there. So I believe that was 30 seconds. I hope you feel a bit energized now, because at least when I eat, it makes me super tired, especially on a Friday. Can I ask you to be quiet for a second? Thank you for sharing this very talkative, energized session with me. The answer to that one with me, it's an easy one. So I would, of course, choose volunteering. It's my passion. Let's start with a short introduction about me. So I moved to Finland when I was 3 years old, and if I think about my cultural identity, it's definitely Finnish. In addition to living in Finland, I've also lived in China, in the States, in France. Currently I work as an IT consultant. But actually, before this year, so last year, I worked at Startup Sauna as a director of community, and I got that job through volunteering, so I want to share my story. I did a short, memory, down the memory lane trip, and I tried to come up with all the volunteering experience that I've had. And you know what? It continues on all 3 slides. So, you name it, I've done it. I'm not very good with this clicker. It's like a bit of dancing. But I'm interested to know a bit more about you. So who's a student here? You can put your hand up. Are you all students? Because I was told that quite a few of you are working. Who's working? Are you doing both? You can put both of your hands up. Okay, I can see a pretty active group of people we have here. And then I was wondering, so most of you are probably from Aalto. You can just answer. No. No, okay. Well, interesting. My last question is, do you plan to stay in Finland?
Yes.
Okay, so if you plan to stay in Finland, I have some really good news for you. Why you should volunteer. The first point is, I'm sure you've seen this picture somewhere, right? It's a very Finnish picture. It's actually the epitome of Finnish culture. Now, in Finland, we have this special word called talkoot. It means this volunteering thing where everyone goes and they expect to pitch in together. No matter whether you're a C-level person or you're still a kid in school, I'm sure a Finnish person, they must have attended talkoot in their life at some point. So if you plan to stay in Finland, this is a great way to get to know local people, make new friends, and of course, learn Finnish. I would love to say that you don't need to learn Finnish in Finland. And I'm sure that's the case for like 99% of the time, but if you want to be in the 1%, it's really important. Now my next point, why you should volunteer. It's a career point, so career perspective. For me, volunteering has been a great way to get to know new people and build my network. You all probably know that most of the jobs, they are not online, they are not on websites. You actually have to know people. And there's even been research done by Duunitori, where they found that more than half of the jobs are hidden jobs in Finland. So it's really important to build your professional network. And if I think about my past projects in volunteering, it feels like they've been a mini simulation of real work life. It's a project where you usually tend to get a lot more responsibility than in real work, let's say. And you learn these super essential skills, like if I think about how I communicate with my friends, I text them, I use WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger, but I actually never send them emails. But you know what? In the work life, I have to send a lot of emails, and it's something that takes up a lot of my time, and I absolutely hate it. But since I've done so many volunteering gigs, I now know how to send emails. And the last point. It's you. Not only do you get to meet new people when you volunteer and get to learn essential skills for startups and for corporate world, but one of the most valuable lessons for me has been that I actually get to know myself when I work with other people. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses, I know where my limits are, and it really helps me to lead myself in the work life. Quite often in a lot of startups, it's a very low hierarchical structure, which means that there's no one to really guide you or tell you what to do. So you really need to take the first step, take the initiative, and lead yourself. And for you to successfully do that, you need to know who you are. Next, I would like to share 2 personal volunteering stories. So let's start with the good one. The good one is sort of like the boring one. So I still have this stage fright thing, and I heard about Talk to Talk. I applied, I participated, I did super well. I was voted as one of the best speakers of the night, and now I feel like I also have a new family from all the other talents and coaches and the organizers. It was a super safe environment where we could just go crazy and share our most vulnerable stories. Like even one of the people there, one time he had just come straight from the hospital because he was in a really bad shape, but then he knew that it was a good and safe environment to share how he was feeling, and we all supported him in his journey, and we all made it through. It was a great story and one of the best experiences I've had in my life. However, this is actually the first talk that I'm doing after Talk to Talk. There's been lots of people who have come up to me and told me like, hey, I've seen your video, it was really cool, but I haven't actually been asked to do a speech anywhere. And for a lot of participants in Talk to Talk, the main goal was to become a professional speaker. But I didn't become one. I wouldn't mind being one, like they get paid quite a lot and then you only speak like 10 minutes. 2 weeks goes by, I go to an event by Microsoft, and there's another person there, a dude, who I knew that he was somehow involved in Aalto, yes, but I wasn't quite sure what he does. And he comes up to me and he's like, Sini, we need to talk. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's talk. And I'm like, what do you want to talk about? And he's like, what happened about Junction? I'm like, okay, let's do it. And he's like, not now, later. And I'm like, okay, when is later? Turns out that later was a couple of hours later, and he asks me like, so what happened? And I'm like, okay, so I send a message and I wanted to switch my shifts, and he goes, stop, I know what happened. And I was like, okay, and thinking in my head like, this doesn't make any sense, like, does he live in some alternative universe, or what's going on here? Like, I have no clue what we're talking about right now. And then he was just like, yeah, and that was the conversation that we had. I know, right? Like, okay, cool. Good luck with Junction then, yeah. However, I also had another volunteering gig in the Aalto ES ecosystem. I did this radio show called Startup Radio. And one of our team members, Casper, he was director of community at Startup Sauna, and he was ending his job contract there. So then I got the job, which was absolutely great. I was really exhilarated about that. But unfortunately, it wasn't a perfect fit. So after 2 months, I'm again thinking like, oh my God, is Aalto ES really for me? Like, this is so frustrating at times. This job is nothing like I was told or promised, and I'm not really sure if I'm learning anything here. It was a tough year. I decided to give the job a chance anyhow. But there were many hardships, and the Startup Sauna Accelerator program got shut down. The building still exists and the space exists, but the accelerator was shut down, unfortunately. I also got to do some cool things, so in the end I'm definitely happy that I did give it a chance. It was only 1 year, so I don't feel like I lost so much there. And definitely the best thing that I learned during that year, or I did that year, was Talk to Talk. At the end of my year, I got offered this job at Slush, and if we think about the Aalto ES ecosystem hierarchy, it's really like the Slush is on the top of the pyramid. So if you get to go there, it's a huge thing and a really good thing for your career. But I felt like my year at Startup Sauna had been so hard that I definitely wanted to take a breather and step back for a while. Another thing that I'm super grateful for doing this is, or pushing through the hardships, is definitely meeting all the great people and making new friends who share the same work ethic and the same view on the world, which is we all want to make it a better place through startups. Okay, so I've got 3 minutes. I'm gonna rush this through a bit. So what I learned, volunteering, it's definitely a highway when you think about how much you learn in such a short time. But there's also parts that take a long time, such as building a network and getting to know people. And especially if you don't share the same language, it's gonna take even longer. And just building that rapport between different people. You know what? Volunteering is not for everyone. Even I had moments when I was like, oh, although yes, it's definitely not for me. Like, just gonna leave this behind me. So this doesn't have to be something that suits you, and that's totally okay. There's many different ways to get where you want to be, but this was, for me, the most efficient way and the way that felt the most right for me as well. Next, I have a exercise when I get it out. So here I have an arrow with time on it. If you want to find the right fit, the right volunteering thing for you, you have to think about how much time you're willing to put into the work. Then the second part is growth. How much do you want to learn? Is it enough if you're just over here, or would you prefer to be up there? Do you want to maximize your learning, or is just a little bit okay? And then after you've been thinking about those separately, we have the business students with dream, which is 2 arrows like a graph. Now, places that you want to avoid, for me, is definitely below the middle line. But if we think about the top part, there's actually a wolf in sheep's disguise here. And it is that green square over there. This one up here, it doesn't exist. Just to let you know. If you want to grow and learn something, it's gonna take time. It's an unbeatable formula. Like, you cannot cheat this, unfortunately. If you read some of the interviews about business leaders, they all say one thing, that they put countless amount of hours and effort into making their business succeed. Another thing that differentiates these business leaders from average person is that they've also failed a lot more many times than an average person. So from here, it's good to keep in mind that you have to try, fail, and repeat. Okay, sorry, let's go one back. So if you're wondering what you should do, there's lots of many options. There's AYY. You don't have to be an Aalto student to volunteer with AYY, and I see this VS here, seems like a really great opportunity, and I love how professionally you've organized this event. I think the best way, however, is to talk to people and ask them. This will save you a lot of time and effort. So, happy volunteering, and thank you for having me here tonight.